This is Sean with Voices of Racing. We're here with Ron McQueeney in your home, and you have a whole bunch of race history behind you in all those books. So if we could just touch on the books for a second, what's if you could talk about the categories of what are these different race books you've got behind you?
Okay, behind me I've got almost every race book put out about the Indianapolis 500. I'm probably missing one or two, but anytime a book came out about the Indianapolis 500, I bought it. I am real proud of my library in here, and I refer to it quite often. A lot of books I've been involved in as far as providing pictures. Some of the books that are behind me have my pictures in them, pictures of me in them, and in the acknowledgments for the books, I'm mentioned in the acknowledgments. So I'm pretty proud of that.
All right, first question. Technically, I know the answer. 300 covers of magazines or magazines and books. How many covers did you have your photos on?
Roughly 300, give or take.
And what were some of the more known publications you could just rattle off?
Auto Week, Motor Magazine, almost anything to do with racing. IndyCar Magazine. Several books I've had the cover on. Right off the top of my head, there's been so many that I can't really name them verbatim, and I don't have examples of a lot of the stuff because it just got too much to save, and so the fun stuff I kept, and the rest of the stuff I let get away one way or the other.
What would you say would be the most proud cover you were on that you didn't see coming? Time Magazine, like what was something that was to you it was a gift that you were even given the opportunity that they decided to have your photo on the cover?
I probably would have to look at some IndyCar magazines back in the day when it was in business. And I had one that came right out of the blue. I had a call from a doctor's office that was doing an article about the Speedway, and they wanted a picture of the start of the race, which I had shot. And when they sent me a copy of the magazine, it was gastrointestinal, some kind of specific magazine for doctors of the gastrointestinal department, and it was the start of the race taken by me on this magazine cover that I had never heard of. I've also got one on the wall in one of my rooms that I have pictures of that was a Russian magazine that was all written in Russian and everything, and on the cover was, I think, the two Newman-Haas cars.
Okay, so I want to touch on your first race. There's a lot of things that happen as you being the director of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We're also going to be able to touch on specific years, specific situations, and we're going to be able to bring up some photographs that you have in your computer of those to kind of show us the background play-by-play moment that was captured. But your first race as director was the first time it was a 200-mile-an-hour lap. Is that right?
That's correct.
It also was the first female driver on the track.
That was Janet Guthrie. She qualified for the race after attempting but not having a fast enough car the year before. My first year as director, Janet became the first female to qualify for the Indianapolis 500.
And there was a first four-time winner.
A.J. Foyt.
So your first race,
my first race,
was the first time they broke 200 miles an hour.
Yes.
First time a female driver, and first time a four-time winner.
There were three major accomplishments during that.
What year was this?
1977.
1977. Mm-hmm. So that would have put you, how old? You're 20. How old were you?
I would have been 32 years old.
32 years old.
Yeah.
So obviously those were extremely big moments in general. Mm-hmm. 200 miles an hour, they've never been broken before.
It they'd come close, but there had never been an unofficial lap during practice that year,
but not during
but
the
not
race.
during the qualifying, which became official when they qualified.
So who was the 200-mile-an-hour driver?
Tom Sneva.
Tom Sneva.
Mm-hmm.
And you said AJ was the winner.
AJ won the race that year, and he was the first 4-time winner of the 500.
And then how did Guthrie, is that her name?
Janet Guthrie.
How did she do?
She did well. I think the car that she was driving, I don't remember where it finished in the race, but she was very accomplished and was a very good driver at the time.
So on Monday, because it happens on Sunday,
right? The race,
and you
happened on
look
Sunday.
back to Sunday, from Monday being your first day as director, and realizing all of those things happened to happen. Did you look at like the future as, well, I've already knocked out some of the top epic historical moments on my first year, and what else could happen? But what, I guess my real question is, what was like for that next day when you got to reflect on all of those major things that happened that first day of you being director? What was that like for you?
Well, it really wasn't the next day, because the day after the 500, we have to get up early the next morning and get ready to shoot the winning driver and team and car
Sure.
on the start-finish line. Then we have to get all those pictures taken, and that involves about an hour and a half or 2 hours of shooting the winning driver, and have to get the car downtown for the victory banquet. So it's quite an involved day, because we also had to shoot, at that time, we had to shoot the victory banquet. And so I really didn't have time for reflection on all the things that happened until about a week later. I thought, wow, what a first act for me, and have all these things happen.
Did you get a lot of accolades from the staff about
No,
how you ended up capturing those moments?
I did my job. I
Did your job.
Didn't really expect accolades. I was relieved that I got through my first race as director without screwing much up, albeit the start of the race, but we recovered from that nicely, and thanks to some nice people.
So where were you when AJ won on the start-finish line? Were you above? Were you right above him?
I was in what was called the horseshoe above Victory Circle, in front of the or on the grandstands, in front of the Tower Terrace grandstands.
Right.
And as soon as Foyt pulled in, he came out of his car, removed his gloves, and threw them at me. I don't think he knew who he was throwing them at. He was throwing them at the line of photographers. And it was either, for me, it was either catch those gloves, because they were heading right toward my face. Either catch them or take the picture that I was assigned to do. I chose taking the picture, and I missed the gloves, which would be a prize thing here in my room if I had them right now.
Right. So you also have noted here that 1977 was the first time that you had a snow photo. Is that right? Or
when I
in January?
And my first race being director was 77. But the first time we had a snowfall was in November. A big snowfall was in November of 1977. And I woke up to about 10 inches of snow. Now, I lived within 2 miles of the Speedway, right off of Georgetown Road. And I got up that morning, saw the snow, grabbed my camera, hastily put on clothes and put on a heavy jacket, drove down to the Speedway. Instead of going to my office, I parked behind the museum, or excuse me, the office, and ran up the slick, icy stairway to the standee. Went out there, and just as the sun was coming up, I saw that there were 2 tracks coming down the pit area in the snow. And I was really disappointed because I wanted a bare track, no tracks of any kind in the snow, and take a decent picture of that. When I got the picture back a couple days later from developing, and because it was in color, I looked at it and I thought, wow, those tracks really made that shot because it shows the depth of the snow. And I ended up putting that shot on my business card.
Wow. Only one shooting the track in the snow.
Exactly. Now, it had been done before, but never in color. It was always in black and white.
Right.
And I chose to do it in color. And that shot showed up in so many different books and magazines and on newspapers around the country because I was so proud of that I shipped it out to some of the magazines that dealt with racing.
Right.
And got the thing published. So that was a thrill.
That's pretty amazing. All right, so we're going to go. We're going to set up by your computer so you could show some of these old historic photos and give the backstory on it. So next shot, we're just going to pause this. All right, so this first shot, we're going to end up zooming in on it. I'm assuming that is you, and how old are you in that shot?
That is 2009. Trying to date myself earlier.
2009.
Yeah,
and
we did. This was you've seen several of these shots that we set up of drivers, and this was the first year of the centennial era of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There were 3 years involved. 1909 when the racetrack was built, through 1910 when the track was paved with bricks. 1911, the first 500. We called that the Centennial Era. And this was a shot that we did a thing at the Allison home. James Allison, one of the founders of the Speedway. We set this up in a room where we could get all the drivers. And while we were doing it, I was the only photographer, and there was a video photographer from Telex, and which is Indy Productions now, or I think it's now called Penske Productions. But this was taken in 2009, and this was one of the test shots before the drivers all got there, and took several test shots. And somebody says, "Why don't you go up there and get in a shot?" So I reluctantly did, and that's what we ended up doing with all the drivers.
And there's also a shot of Al Unser Sr., Al Unser Jr., and Bobby Unser that we utilize for doing the Unser stories of all the 50 documentaries of Mario and everybody about the memories of the Unsers. You were able to see that. Do you have that shot as well? Or
probably.
If it's not teed up, you don't have to worry about showing it this second. That's fine. What's the next shot that you wanted to show?
Let's see.
So let's talk about this shot for a little bit.
This is a shot as I was coming into work. I parked in the infield, and as I was getting out of my car, I looked, and the moon was perfectly above the pylon. And I always carried a camera with me when I was coming to work because I never knew what I would see as I was pulling into the speedway. And this was happened to be one of those shots. This was in the 2000s. I can't tell you exactly what year it was, but I got out of my car, so I had to have a picture of that.
All right, so we're going to have to a wee bit on that so we could actually get the moon shot. There it is.
Yeah.
That's pretty beautiful. You've got another one with the pagoda involved.
That's the morning when the bomb goes off. And that's the bomb going off at 6 a.m. to open the track on race day. There's the moon. Actually, that was taken the same day as a full moon heading towards Pagoda.
Okay. Is this at the beginning before the start, or when is this shot? And who's on that front car?
This shot was taken, it was set up by the museum. This was all winning cars of the 500, starting with, and this happened in 2011, right before I retired. This is the Marmon Wasp. This is the 61 Foyt winner. That was the 50th anniversary of the 500. And this is the 2011, or the 100th anniversary of the first race, not the 100th running of the 500, but the 100th anniversary from 2011 back to 1911. And we had the first, 50th, and 100th winner on the front row. The rest of the cars are all winners from the museum. And I was on a high lift and got up as high as we could and got several different angles of that. That went on posters, book covers, many times. This happens to have another photographer shot it for me, had me in the picture with on the 2011 car, and that's significant now because I retired in 2011. It's Dario Franchitti's car.
Okay.
And that, again,
speaking of some legends, who do we have here in the photo?
We have over here is Bobby Unser, Johnny Rutherford, Rick Mears, and Parnelli Jones. This was taken at that centennial celebration.
Okay.
This was a shot, we set this up at, I believe it was at Homestead in 2006 when Sam Hornish won the 500 and he was getting ready to win the championship for the Indy Racing Series.
Go ahead. So Oliver Winery, huh? You're in a hot air balloon. Where are you going to shoot above?
One of the great things I got to do throughout my career was get to do a lot of things that not very many people get to do in life. One of them was we had balloon races at the track, and what it was is they take 5 or 6 or 10 or a bunch of hot air balloons, and they all go for a certain location and drop a bag. While they're in the air, they drop a bag, and the balloon that gets it closest to the bag, to a big X on the ground, wins a trophy. And to go up with this balloon, I was chief photographer, so I got to go up. Several other photographers got to go up in balloons. And we went up in the Oliver Winery balloon. And there, another balloon taking off right beside the pagoda.
How many balloons would go that day?
Well, as you can see, there's a 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 20 or 25.
Okay. And they started from where?
Started from the infield of the Speedway. They started like right in there in the parking area behind the lake. No, actually they started in this area. And as you can see, I'm in the balloon now and photographing the aerial view of the racetrack and the balloons in the background.
Go.
Not only did I get to go up in a balloon that day and take pictures, one year my wife went with me when I was getting ready to shoot the start of the balloon race, and somebody said, come on, you can get in the balloon if you want to and go for a ride. I said, well, I have my wife with me. I'd just as soon not leave her stranded here. And they said, well, bring her along. So I got her in the balloon too, and the two of us got to go up for about an hour balloon ride, which was fun.
So when everybody took off from the track, where did you land? Where did the majority of people
We landed on the south side of Indianapolis, in somebody's backyard, actually. And as we were coming down, we were just almost into a tree. And I reached out out of the basket and pulled a leaf off the top of that tree and gave it to my wife. And I think she still has it in a scrapbook,
Wow.
along with pictures of us in the balloon. We also, you still going? We also got to ride in the Goodyear blimp, which was fun. Many of the things I got to do, and I'll show you pictures later on, I got to drive a competition rail dragster at a local drag strip. I got to ride at the Speedway with Ed Carpenter in the two-seater. I got to drive the single-seater Indy car at Raceway Park and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I got to ride in a stunt plane that did the pre-race activities before it did exhibitions of all the stunts that they do with all that. The guy went out for practice, and I had made a comment to our one of our media relations guys that happened to hire the stunt pilot. I was watching all the gyrations and everything he was doing at one of the races. I said, "Boy, I'd sure like to do that." So a few races later, he says, "Don't eat too much tonight. You're going to go up in the stunt plane." Okay. So I get in the plane. The guy takes off, and we're on the radio, and he says, "What do you want me to do?" And I says, "Well, do something with a lot of G-force so I can see how I react to several G's. And after that, I'll let you know." So he does a loop. And in the loop, he did a couple of spirals with it. And I didn't have any problems and had fun. And I says, "Okay, do what you want to do." So in that stunt plane, I got to go up. I did, and I'm in the front of the plane. The pilot's in the back. So I'm going to be the first one in if it goes in. We go up and we do what's called
Stall.
We stalled, came backwards.
Right.
Went like this, spiraling towards the ground, and at the last moment he pulls it up and goes up into another one and goes over forwards and does the same thing. And we did a wing walk. He did several snap rolls. It was the most fun I've ever had in a vehicle in all my life.
You got to walk out.
And I got to walk out. So that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, is getting to go up in that stunt plane.
That's pretty neat. All right, so explain, what is this on your wall?
This is a picture of it wasn't the front page, but it was a full page ad for Pep Boys in the after the race at Las Vegas, the final race of the season, where Kenny Brack won the series and Arie Luyendyk won the race. What we had to do after the race was, of course, I was digital by that time. We had to go and send these images to that same afternoon that Luyendyk won the race and Brack won the series. We had to send those images to USA Today. The next day, it was in the paper, and they had this made up and sent to me because I was the photographer involved.
So just as a quick shot here, you've got a lot of other memorabilia and photographs. And this is throughout your house as well.
Yeah.
So the ones we're just barely touching on the computer, there's a lot more that you've been able to frame because of historic value. So what's another one you want to showcase over here on the computer itself?
The pictures I have on my computer, I had a program that I went out and did speaking engagements to groups, and did that for the Speedway, and have continued doing that after I retired. And the Speedway allowed me to use these images as long as it was all gratis, which I do make these things without getting paid for. And just because of my fortunate thing of being able to work at the Speedway for all those years. But I have a series of photographers on a PowerPoint display that I can refer to when I am giving my speeches and show the people that I'm talking to some of the images that I've been involved in.
Okay. All right, well, let's check out a few more. So who was the driver and what is the car? What the year?
The driver was the winning driver, three-time winner Wilbur Shaw. This car was the car he won in 1940. We took 15 cars out of the museum time, and when the new garages were built in 1984, I took a double garage, fit black carpeting on the floor, the walls, and all three of the three walls in the floor was with black carpeting or black muslin, and we'd get one car at a time. We'd bring it in the garage. I'd arrange it the way I wanted to. I was shooting this all by myself on a 4x5 view camera, and everything was totally dark. I would fire up a strobe. I'd have to do each car individually because the cars were different colors and took different types of the strobe. This particular image, I think I probably shot it 13 to 15 times with a strobe while the camera was wide open. Then when I got done with that, I'd fill in some of the shadow areas with a handheld strobe, and ended up, this was on a calendar that the Speedway put out in 1985, I believe. And it was a series that I was real proud of.
And so was there literally black floor and black background? That was
floor,
the setup.
and every time we took about 4 or 5 different angles of most of the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And each time the guy that was in the restoration department of the museum would bring the car, drop it off outside. We had to do this when there was no inclement weather through a period of about 3 weeks. And he'd drop the car off outside. I'd raise the garage door, pull the car inside, get it the angle that I wanted by physically pushing the car. Then I'd have to clean the fingerprints off the car, set the camera up the way I wanted it, do the photography, and then go over to the phone that they had hooked up in the garage area, call the guy to bring another car back and take this car back to the museum. And each car was different because the color of the paint made it a different number that I had to, because of all the black background, I had to pump the strobe up about 15 times, anywhere from 12 to 15 times. And each car I shot with a Polaroid back on the 4x5 camera, and to get the lighting right, and then went with the color to get this image.
Okay. So this is Emerson in 1989, and the backstory that the public never knew is he won $1 million. As far as a purse, his team did. Is that what it was? And you tried to make
the winning team. This was the first time that the winning team won over $1 million. So what we did after the victory banquet and the day after photos, we had Emerson come back out with his car and the trophy the next morning, and they brought $1 million out in a armored vehicle, and we put the $1 million on the car. Now, before I got to shoot the picture and the $1 million, the people brought the bags out with the money in it, and when I leaned down to start to open the bag, I heard shotguns cock. We had security there because of the $1 million cash, and they didn't know who I was. So when I start to zip open this sealed bag, I didn't want to shoot the picture of $1 million in bags. It wouldn't really make a good picture. So before I knew that they didn't know what I was doing, I start to open the bags, and and the policemen cocked their shotguns. And fortunately, my PR director was out there and said, "No, I'm sorry. He's with the Speedway. He can do what he wants to, and we'll be responsible." Okay. So I start emptying the bags, and I put $1 million in bundles of money out on the car. And we got that out there, and it really wasn't impressive. $1 million is not what people think. And I said, "Can we get some more money out there?" So they went back to the truck and pulled out bag after bag after bag. And
Was it already in the truck?
It was already in the truck.
Just happened to be $6 million situation.
It was taken out of the museum, or out of the Speedway, from the weekend's proceeds for the 2 days before the race, the day before the race day, and day after.
So how much did you end up putting on there?
I ended up filling the car so it looked like there was $1 million. But what I found out later, and I had no idea how much I was handling there, but I had no idea that we had put out close to between $4 and $6 million was the estimate. We didn't count it, but the accounting department for the Speedway had to recount all the money that I pulled out of the bags, because the bags were sealed with the amounts, and I was not real popular.
Did they ever do that again?
Not to my knowledge.
You're the only one to ever stack $6 million on a race car.
As of right now, I'm the only one. And I'm not sure why it was none other than this was the first time $1 million. And again, we didn't aim to put that much money out there, but $1 million in the bundles that we had didn't look like $1 million.
Well, it just shows a testimony to your eye as a photographer that you're like, we need a better shot. We need to make this believable.
Now, when I was finally approved and the shotguns were lowered, I was the one approved to handle the money, and I was the one that placed all that money on the car. Emerson reached down and started to pick up that, and they told him no, that he was not allowed to pick up that money. He says, "That's mine, I want it." No, not
like
today.
Not yet, not from this bundle.
So I was the one that placed all that money where I wanted it on the car, and nobody else could touch it. And of course, I've never seen that much before in my life or after.
Right.
So,
well, that's great. So everybody watching, they can see Helio Castroneves. No, I'm sorry. No, it's Tony Kanaan. Tony Kanaan. My bad. But he is not in Vegas, and he is not wearing a headdress. But to get that angle, let's talk about it.
Okay. I saw this developing, and I never thought it would happen like it did. But pre-race was getting ready to happen, and all the drivers were mingling behind the pre-race stage at the Kentucky Speedway. Belterra Casino was the race sponsor, and they brought some of their females there for show, and they were going to go up with the drivers and escort the drivers up to the trailer that is the stage that the drivers would wave to the crowd. As the drivers were walking to, I saw this young lady in her headdress and all the feathers, and I thought, boy, if one of those drivers gets in front of that where it looks like he's wearing that headdress, I'm going to nail it. And I waited, and Kanaan happened to be the one that showed up there, and it was just perfect. And I hit one shot only. That's what I came up with.
Yeah,
I put it on the website that night, not knowing how Tony would feel about it. He got a hold of me a few days later, and he says, "I want a picture of that for my office." So that
is beautiful, and I'm sure he still has it. Well, did you sign it for him?
No,
never did.
Okay, this is a picture of Al Unser Sr., and I'll go into the backstory on it. Al came to the Speedway in 1987. Came to the Speedway in 1987 without a ride. And as I was walking through the pits, I happened to see Al, and I said, "Al, have you got anything going this year?" He says, "No, why don't you hire me?" So we talked a little bit, and I ran back to my trackside office, and I made him a name tag with staff photographer, got off the shelf, got a camera, Instamatic, and I ran back out hoping he was still in the pits. He was there talking to a bunch of drivers along with Al Jr. And I said, "Hey, Al, I got something for you. You got a job." He looked at me and I says, "Here's your name tag." He put it on his collar. "Here's your camera." And we laughed about it. All the other drivers laughed about it. And we said our goodbyes and walked off. Later on that day, Danny Angias was out for a practice run and crashed and was injured. And they went to Reading, Pennsylvania, and brought a show car that was entered in the race, but was still on display at a hotel in Reading, Pennsylvania, and brought the car to the speedway. Al practiced with it, qualified it. I think he qualified about 25th or something like that. On race day, he worked his way up, got in contention, and won the race. Al Unser Sr. is the only Indianapolis 500 staff photographer to win the 500.
And
we laughed
where'd
about
you get
that.
the camera? Let's look at it. Nobody used those cameras to shoot race cars.
It was a joke when I gave him that, and you can see the expression on Al's face. He got a kick out of it.
Was it a real camera? It was so this
a $5 Instamatic.
Does Instamatic mean, as we would say, disposable these days?
It's a disposable camera.
It's a disposable film camera.
But to this day, while he was still alive, at his museum, that was one of the stories he told the people that would be there when he was in the museum. He would bring that story up.
That's great.
Not only did I shoot race cars of all kinds, from Indy 500 cars or Indy cars to sprint cars and midgets and champ dirt cars and sports cars, anything wheeled, but I also shot several boat races and unlimited hydroplanes. This happens to be built Muncie down at Madison, Indiana. And to get this picture, I was taken out by a Kentucky State policeman, taken out to the middle of the bridge, where I climbed over the railing of the bridge, dangled over the bridge until I was able to jump down to the pylon that held the bridge up, stand there during the race, take pictures, and then to get back up, I had to jump up to a ladder that was attached to that pylon. I had to jump up about 2 feet. If I missed, I fell into the Ohio River below and probably was taken under by the undertow. But with 3 cameras around my neck, I still did it anyway, and got some really neat shots, that being one of them. Probably wouldn't get away with that today with OSHA and everything, but back then photographers were dispensable. So
were you ever on a moving vehicle shooting? Any type of moving vehicle?
Oh, yeah, several times. I've been in the back of pickup trucks. I've been in the back of pace cars shooting right before the race. Matter of fact, I have some pictures that somebody took of me doing that. And I'm standing up in the back of a pace car doing 110, 120 miles an hour.
Standing.
And
what was attached? Did you have something to?
No.
You just no belt to the seat.
Nope.
Nothing.
Nope. Just bracing myself on the seat and against the back of the seat and doing the best I can. Let's see if I can find that picture case I was in.
And here we go. So this is, what year is this?
This was in the 2000s. I can't remember year to year, but this was probably 2009. Looking at the car, and 2010 it looks like. And this was at the Speedway, and Johnny Rutherford is driving the pace car, and I'm behind the driver and the other IRL or IndyCar official, and I'm taking a picture of the field from the back of the space car.
Right. It's pretty amazing.
I did that at Long Beach on a road course in front of in the back end of an enclosed Toyota that I almost didn't get as lucky as I was here without falling out of the car. If it hadn't been for a cameraman grabbing a hold of me, a video photographer grabbed a hold of me as I was heading out the car when the car accelerated real fast. And this was at Long Beach.
Wow. So you were a White House photographer as well?
No. This was a situation where I think this was in 2004 after Buddy Rice had won the 500. We took the winning driver. First, we went to New York, did several TV and radio interviews with the winning driver of the Speedway the day after, 2 days after the race. Then we went to Texas and did an interview or did some things down there. And then we went to Milwaukee for the next race and previewed the race with the winning driver. And we also got invited to the White House. And while we were there, I happened to go up and stand behind this, and somebody take a picture with one of my cameras, and that's what I ended up with.
You didn't say anything on the pulpit?
I did not say anything on the pulpit. This is me in early years on my qualifying stand, and I had 7 or 8 cameras lined up, and it looked like I was playing piano or something. But when the driver, car, and team would get in the slot where we took the qualifying shot, I would take at least 1, maybe 2 pictures with each one of these cameras. I had a black and white backup, a color negative, a colors negative backup. I had a 35 millimeter backup to back up in case I had a camera malfunction in any of my 2 1/4 cameras. I had color slides in a 35 millimeter camera and a 2 1/4, and backups on backups. But I took a picture of every qualifier with all these cameras.
So they weren't moving.
They were not moving.
That's the only way you can pull off utilizing all those different cameras.
And
wow,
they were done for a reason. There were several different types of film and backups of each type.
That's amazing. So I just noticed the Three Stooges underneath the cameras. So explain why you had a photograph of the Three Stooges underneath the cameras.
We tried to lighten the day. This was a very hectic day. Cars would come in right after they qualified. First place they saw was me and the cameras. And we'd do that, the ABC interview, and then the mass media interview. And trying to get the drivers as they first come out of the car to at least smile. I put the Three Stooges up there, but I also, you didn't notice, the little birdie on my camera. I think the bird was yellow, so it was bright enough to show up. And I'd say,
point again on the screen where
I'd say, watch the birdie.
Do you know where that term came from as a photographer?
No.
You don't? Okay. All right. All right. So you alluded to this shot earlier that this was in, what year was it?
This was 1977 in November, and it was 20 degrees below zero when I hiked up. After the snow, it turned cold. And I hiked up to the top, or to the second level of the grandstands, fighting icy steps all the way, and those steps are not real accommodating to ice. And when I get up there and get out where I'm going to take the picture, this is what I saw with that. And I was so disappointed that there was tracks in the snow. And if I'd have had a cell phone at that stage of the game, I'd have called up the superintendent and been real mad at him. And when I got the picture back, that shows the depth of the snow.
Well, better, it shows a race car being solo running on the track in the snow. Hypothetically, that can make somebody's mind think there was one lone driver that got on the track.
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
In 1982, in November, December, we had a large snowfall, and I'm sitting in my office, and the phone rings, and it's a PR agent from living in Florida who heard about our snow. He was representing the winning car from that year for STP. He says, "Hey, if I had the shop bring over the show car, could we get a picture of that car in the pit area in the snow?" I said, "Yeah, have them bring it over." So we cleared off a part of the pits where they could push the snow. And that was about an 8 or 9 inch snowfall, so it's pretty hard to push a low Indy car in the snow. So we pushed the car back to that angle, and I started to shoot it. And I said, "Now wait a minute. I wish we had somebody that could get in that car and pose as Gordy." He says, "I've got the helmet, and I got the show helmet in the truck. Let me go get it." So he goes and gets it. We get one of the mechanics to get in the car with Gordy's helmet on it and take the picture. That picture went around the world. We had press sheets from all over the country and all over the world of people that printed that picture because it was so unique, and people didn't see that angle of the speedway that often with snow on the ground.
Right. That's beautiful.
Later on, I had an employee that decided he wanted to shoot a car in the snow. And I'm not going to have it, am I? After this shot was taken, it was a very famous shot a bunch of years later. I think it was in 2010. I had a new employee, and he had seen this picture, and he wanted to take a picture of a car in snow. So told him to go down to the basement of the museum and pick out the car he wanted to take it out, because it'd be easier to get a car out of the museum in the snow from the basement rather than taking it off the one that was on display in an actual museum. So he went down, picked out the car, brought up a picture of it, and showed me what it was. And it was Al Unser's 1987 winner. It was bright yellow. And I said, "Well, we can't do that because if you look, they have Goodyear tires on it, and we're a Firestone racetrack, so we don't want to put something out that's going to be have opposing tires on it." So I called the people that have the show cars and the two-seater, and I said, "Can you bring one of the show cars over, and we want to show it in the snow? What do you have? What color do you have of a car that you can bring out in the snow?" He says, "I have a black Indy car that I can bring you over." He says, "Okay." So he brought the car over, we pushed it out, and I'm starting to take pictures. In the meantime, I had called the museum, and I said, "Tell Mr. Spurley, who was the head of our restoration department, to bring out the Marmon Wasp." And I was just joking because I knew Spurley would have a conniption trying to bring out the first winner in 12 inches of snow. And it was just starting to snow again that day too, and I knew he wouldn't want to bring that out. So then I said, after he stews about it a little bit, then just tell him I was joking. I don't need the car out there. So as we're shooting the car in the snow, and again, we're in with a black Indy car, current model, and our current 2010, the photographer that wanted this shot to do this shot, and I was backing him up just for giggles. And he looks up and he says, "Ron, look what's coming up the pits." And I turned around, and 10 inches of snow, here comes the Marmon Wasp. They're pulling it out from the museum, got it off the floor of the museum, pulled it through the snow over to the pit area. So we put the Marmon Wasp and the current Indy car at that time out and did a picture in front of the pagoda, the new pagoda, with that car. We had it on a Christmas card that the Speedway sent out to all their friends and people they deal with.
Okay. So we're going to touch on this photo. We're going to close out this session and go for part 3, but we're going to get into essentially driver moments, celebrity moments and memorabilia you have here in your house on the wall. So why don't you explain this photo, and then we'll cut and we'll go to part 3.
Okay. This photo is 3 of what I would call some of my heroes in racing. In the car, and in his 1928 winning car, he was a 3-time winner, and the first 3-time winner, Louis Meyer. Behind him in the yellow shirt is Clay Ballinger, a driver and also a riding mechanic back in the 20s, and a 30s driver and 40s of Billy DeVore. And they happened to be out while we were taking pictures of the 28 winner for an article to go for the museum. They happened to show up and see the car out there, and they came out, and I got the 2 guys behind the car, and we really had a good shoot that day. But those were 3 guys I really knew, and they became friends because they were around the Speedway during my early years as director.
Okay. All right, we're going to close this out. We're going to part 3.